Welcome back to the Leverage Podcast, where our goal is simple: to learn from the best and discover how we can all live a better life, build a more fruitful business, and be more productive. Join us each week as we interview fellow entrepreneurs, thought leaders, and leading experts to discuss everything from marketing secrets to new technology and life as an entrepreneur.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Leverage Podcast. I'm your host, Nick Sonnenberg, and as always, we have an extremely special guest, and that is Vinay Patankar. And he is a friend, a collaborator, and also the co-founder of Process Street, which is a tool that I highly recommend and we use every day at Leverage. And it's a tool that helps businesses document, optimize, and automate their processes. And it integrates with tools like Zapier, which is an automation tool that you may or may not have heard of. But this tool is extremely important, especially during times like this with COVID, where you might have turnover for whatever reason. You don't want your team leaving the company with knowledge in their head, and you don't have that as an asset in the company. And it's already known that businesses, if you're ever looking to exit, they're worth way more if you have your SOPs and processes documented. This tool helps you with all that. Vinay, it's kind of surprising that we've never had him on the podcast before, because I feel like I talk about him and Process Street all the time, and he's come to my mastermind events and we've done webinars together. So really excited to finally have him on the show. If after listening to this, you want to give Process Street a try, you can go to tools.getleverage.com, and we have a discount code on that site that you could use to give his tool a try. Highly recommend it. But on this episode, we really geek out on the value and importance of process documentation inside of businesses. So if you're interested in improving your team's efficiency, working smarter instead of harder, and keeping track of everything that's going on in your business, definitely listen closely to this episode. I guarantee that you're going to get a ton of value out of this one. Vinay, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, excited to finally be here.
All right. So right now you're in Panama. You were just telling me before the show, you're on lockdown right now. How's everything going for you personally, professionally?
I feel almost a little bit guilty in that there hasn't been too much disruption to my life in general, where a remote team, I'm used to working from my apartment for long periods of time. It is a bit of a disruption for me personally in that, like, I normally travel a lot. And so a lot of my plans, like this year, I was probably going to be moving, doing a trip every week or something. And so that's being completely reset, but it's not the worst thing. I've still got plenty to do to keep me occupied, and we're still moving forward on most of our core projects. So yeah, I mean, it's not ideal, but we're definitely in a very fortunate situation compared to lots of other people and companies.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I mean, like you, we've never had an office at Leverage, so that was an advantage. Also, congratulations on the raise. I guess it's public now, right?
Yeah,
so
very excited.
Why don't you share what you just accomplished? I guess timing-wise, you couldn't have been more spot on with the timing, huh?
Yeah, extremely grateful for that too. Yeah, so we just closed our Series A. It was led by Excel, and our lead investor is Rich Wong, who led the Atlassian investment, is on the board of Atlassian. They were joined by Salesforce Ventures and Atlassian. He was a $12 million round. And I guess a big part of that strategy, the big point of the raise and the strategy moving forward, is not only just to build the best workflow product ever built. We want to build deep relationships and integrations with a lot of the other software companies. So that's why we partnered with Atlassian and partnered with Salesforce. And also Excel is a very prolific investor in SaaS, being the biggest investor in Slack and Dropbox and Atlassian and a lot of other products that we want to build relationships with. So a big part of that is kind of moving forward to make our tool play better with the rest of the leading SaaS products out there.
So you said workflow management. Do you use that interchangeably with process management? The way I describe it sometimes is, I sometimes like the vocabulary used can be nuanced. So I'm just curious how you describe Process Street.
It's a good point, and it's something we definitely haven't completely nailed down yet. Yeah. And it kind of changes depending on the audience that we're speaking to. So the kind of Silicon Valley terminology is like no code workflow, right? So if you're kind of like in the startup scene and you're used to playing with different products and SaaS products and connecting them together, that's kind of the buzzword. The true real category of software that we're in is business process management. So that's kind of like the true enterprise category. But It's a much more in the world of the Fortune 500s, does that kind of terminology exist, and it's not too much used outside of enterprise. But then to a normal SMB owner that maybe runs a small real estate agency or something, we just make superpower checklists. So just checklists for businesses, and we can superpower them and make them automate different things and manage lots of your business logic and whatnot.
Right. When I give talks and I talk about all these tools and people are like, okay, well, how is this tool different than this tool? Even Asana, they're not even calling themselves right now project management. They're calling themselves like work management tool or something.
Everyone's
like
shifted
they made it
into
like
that. It's weird then, because then like their messaging is then almost exactly the same as Slack, right? When they shift it to that. So it's almost like the messaging of Slack is like, collaborate and be more productive and use less email with your team. Like Asana's messaging is literally exactly the same as that. And Monday's messaging exactly the same as that. So it's a tricky place, because we also could position ourselves in that kind of world. It's like, oh yeah, be more collaborative and productive and, manage work for your team. But then it becomes very confusing as to where's the difference between those products. Like what's the difference between a Slack and Asana and a Process Street, right? So It's definitely something that we're still playing with. And do we want to push hard and maybe kind of educate the market more on the category of process management? Or do we want to maybe just like position ourselves in a more straightforward manner that kind of just directly explains what we do without trying to kind of create some type of buzzword or category around it,
How did you like the way when I just introduced you? Give me some feedback, because I want to be speaking about your company in the right way when I give talks. So when I talk about you guys, I say it's part of knowledge management, where you have the static and dynamic and who, what, when, where, why versus how.
The piece that I think is missing from that explanation is you're not explaining the automation part of it, right? Like you mentioned, you could have like conditions and stuff. But the big difference between us and a wiki is that we actually do work for you, right? Whereas like a wiki is just a place to store knowledge. So that's kind of like where it breaks down a bit. And a lot of the time, like a lot of our customers, that's the most value that we give them. It's not just that we're storing the knowledge for them. It's that we're actually doing work for them, right? Like
when you say doing the work, you mean because of the Zapier integration?
Yeah, through Zapier or through other automations, like or through like the internal features that we have, right? So we might have like handoffs or approvals or like automatic due date assignments or, rotating task assignments, right? So you're kind of like, instead of having to manually do the work, we're kind of like doing that work for you, right? Once it's encoded into the process.
Is that the bigger value add versus like, for me, like one of the other key differences is under a wiki, you can't enforce that someone actually followed the steps. You don't have any kind of version control or history of, hey, did you follow all the steps in this order? So for me, like even without the automation, it's totally different than a wiki because of that.
Yeah, there's an accountability factor there, right? So so what you'll get over a wiki besides the knowledge storage is you'll get visibility, accountability, and automation, right? So visibility will kind of say like, what is going on? Like in a wiki, you can have a document that says, this is how you're supposed to onboard an employee. But in Process Street, you can see we currently have 3 employees being onboarded. One's halfway through, one's two-thirds the way through. John is off this week, sick, he's going to be back, right? Like you can't see that from like a wiki document. You don't get visibility into like what is going on in that current process. Then you get accountability. So you can track who did what, who is actually onboarding John, who are we waiting for right now on this step, who's next in this process, who did this but didn't file the required documents. The next person won't get notified until this person has done this particular step, like kind of forcing accountability and putting that into the system. And then the automation piece. So then it's like, and then instead of copying that data from here to there, we automate it. Instead of like having to remember who needs to do this next, then remember to assign them and set the due date, we'll do that for you, right? So those are kind of like the 3 big value points over a wiki.
Yeah, I'll have to tweak my sales pitch for your tool and include the automation.
We still need to tweak it ourselves. Yeah.
the cleanest that I found was the whole dynamic, static, and who, what, when, where, why versus how.
Yeah, that's good in the larger context of how to structure your knowledge management as a business.
For those few right now that don't know about Process Street, we've just kind of launched straight into the nitty gritty, but why don't we take a bit of a step back, explain how people are using it, giving like the official pitch of Process Street. How do you use Process Street, and how are you finding people right now are being successful using it, navigating through this crisis?
So Process Street is a process management platform where you can build and configure any kind of process. One of the most common use cases, to just give you an example, would be employee onboarding. So you can kind of think about it as a superpower checklist. anytime a new employee starts, you've got a set of steps that need to get done to set up that new employee. So it could be very basic, give them a key card, set them up with a desk and a computer, or it could be set them up with complicated contracts that get generated and sent to them. It could be automatically push them into Slack and add them as a user. You could build in various kind of conditions. So if they're in like the New York office versus the San Francisco office, you might have different steps to do for the New York employee versus the San Francisco employee. You can kind of code all that in, and then you can plug it into, say, your HR system. And then anytime a new employee starts, it would trigger this process. It would tell the IT manager to get their Active Directory account set up or their email account set up. It would tell the HR manager to get their documents set up. It would tell their sales, maybe their direct manager to prepare a welcome pack and get them ready. And it would kind of coordinate the onboarding of that employee across the entire organization and make sure they're exactly set up on the right dates with the right equipment by the right person. And that is done. And you can kind of encode any kind of process. So it could be like, this is how we open the restaurant every day, or this is how we close the restaurant every day, or this is how we run payroll every month, or this is how we send a new proposal to a customer. And you can kind of encode those in and integrate them into your different systems, like your Salesforce or your HelloSign or whatever.
Yeah, we used it with HelloSign as part of our onboarding process. So then one step is that we send a contract out, and then we have a different process that's triggered. Once they sign it, that triggers the onboarding process. So we kind of have the hiring process as like one template. And then when they sign it, that automatically creates a checklist in the onboarding process. So via Zapier, they sign the contract. Now we know we need to onboard them.
Nice. Yeah, that's a common one, is like doing recruitment and then onboarding. Like one of the ways that we use it for onboarding is we actually have two onboarding processes. So we have like the internal onboarding process that's like, what does our management team need to do to get this employee set up? And then we actually have one that we assign to the employee themselves. And it's kind of like a before you get started process. And so we assign them, maybe they have like a month before they're going to actually start, and it will kind of tell them about our values. We'll have videos on our like values and mission. It will tell them about like explain how the organization works, introduce them to some customers and some use cases, and give them some projects to work through and some content to read. And kind of like it's like a pre-onboarding process that they can work through at their own pace to just get more acquainted with the business and the company and our customers and our product. That's pretty cool too.
All right, I just wrote that as a note. We're not doing that. So what else do you got for me?
It also like collects all their data, right? So like through that time, they fill out all their information, and that pushes into the rest of our systems and things.
Yeah, we were always using it internally pretty well, but we weren't doing that for the person getting onboarded. I don't know. I think we just sent them an email like with a bunch of stuff in it, but this is way better. Any other cool ways that you guys are using or that you've seen customers using it?
I mean, we use it in every team. So I can go through like team by team, like how sales uses it, how engineering uses it, how CS uses it, how ops uses it, right? How marketing uses it, which is probably pretty interesting to a lot of your audience, I guess.
Are they publicly available like in templates, these ones?
Yeah, most of them are. Some of the templates we customize a bit because we've got sensitive information in our internal ones. It's not public, but they're largely similar. So you can, that's another good point actually, in that kind of one of the pieces before we get into the specifics, one of the other pieces around like raising the money and the larger vision of Process Street is we're working towards building like the GitHub of no code, or you could think of it as like the GitHub for knowledge workers or non-technical workers. And so we're working to build this giant repository. You could think about it as like the Wikipedia of processes, like this giant repository of knowledge that's going to be the biggest database of process and business operational knowledge in the world, where you can kind of come in and find little bits and pieces of functionality for your organization and just like integrate it into your business that other people have built, right? So
I love that. That's great.
Yeah. So people, I know that Leverage has built some templates, and some of our other partners have built templates, and lots of our customers, and we build a lot of them internally, and we're going to continue to kind of build that out and try to capture, you want to do recruitment? You want a recruitment process? Here's like Process Street's one, here's Leverage one, here's Google's recruitment process. Like pick what kind of process you want to build into your, like import into your business, and it's like plug and play.
Do you incentivize people to add templates to the platform, or is it kind of like GitHub, like just open source community kind of mentality where people just build the community? So
both, there'll be the community aspect. And then right now we actually do have a system for our partners. So if you're a partner and you build templates and they go into our marketplace, and then we find that people are discovering those templates and using them, then customers that sign up through templates that partners create, the partners can get credited for their referral fee that way.
Oh, we should probably do that. One thing that we've done for the last few years with Process Street, which I'm happy we've done, is we rotate positions quarterly. When we do quarterly planning, we identify kind of one rule to rotate for a week to stress test the process. How do you know that the process and process treat's good? In order to stress test it, I found that it's helpful to rotate and have someone else run through it. And then when they get stuck, or if they get stuck, then you have a conversation and then you update the process. That rotation not just has it de-risked, but I found that it makes sure that people aren't just sitting around saying, oh, well, we do it this way because it's the way we've always done it. Like getting fresh eyes on the processes, I found to be really critical to getting better ideas of how to be smarter about the process.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, we definitely recommend that you have a kind of culture of processes, right? Where it's not that there's a particular owner in the business or you're using just a consultant and they manage all your processes. We try and encourage everyone in the organization to give feedback and try and iterate and suggest improvements to the processes, because it can be a lot of work and you can miss little details if it's just one person that's responsible for kind of maintaining those, and it can slow down the process of improving them and things like that if you're always going to go back to that same person. So by trying to enable as many, or like that kind of strategy, right? Having more eyes on the process and having more people on the team be able to kind of like give feedback and improve those processes and distribute the load of kind of managing them, because that's kind of something that you find becomes a non-starter for a lot of small businesses. And that's obviously why you exist as an organization, is that a lot of small business owners just don't have the time to kind of build these processes. And they get to a point where they're like, okay, look, we got these like 30 we want to build. And they have this big idea of this whole project they want to build to document all their processes. When they actually kind of sit down, it's like, okay, this is going to take 2 weeks. We'll do it when we have 2 weeks free in the calendar, which is like never going to happen for a small business owner. And so that's kind of like, we say there's like 3 ways to document your processes, right? You design a culture of process, you allocate some type of process owner that's responsible for it, or you use a consultancy. And a lot of the time what happens in a small business, especially if it's like under 20 people, the person that ends up being the responsible, that middle option, is the founder or the owner of the company. And like that just becomes an amazingly large burden on that person. So we normally never recommend that unless you're a larger business where you can afford to hire someone specifically to manage process in the business, which is normally like enterprises, right? But for a small business owner, it's like either what we find works better is you kind of integrate it into the culture so everybody is contributing to processes, or you're using a consultant, because otherwise like you just don't get it done.
Or maybe even both, right? Because like at Leverage, we do a lot of process stuff. And I think that you could have a culture, but it's going to be pretty tough for them to know all the complexities of like, how do you really get the most out of it with Zapier? And you know what I mean? Like it's such a powerful tool. It's hard to get your whole company knowing all the nuances of like Zapier and other things to really get the most out of it. But for sure, I think that you need to have a culture of it. And that's why I think I found the rotations to be helpful, because then it kind of forces people to document.
If you have a team doing something, so if you have a support team of 3 or 5 people, and they're all running off the same process, you get that same kind of effect, right? Yeah. Because you've got 5 people all giving feedback on it.
What I tell people, most people, especially my private clients or people, Leverage clients, what I'm telling everyone is be proactive rather than reactive. Document the corporate, not like... Right now, you don't have time. It's a little bit late now. That's the thing. Well, tons of our customers have been like, Process Street just saved our life right now as we switch to remote. But it's difficult to do that in the week that you're doing the switch, right? Right now, you don't have time to do it. But what I would suggest, what I'm telling people is just spin up a Zoom, record your screen doing the process, and just like store that somewhere, and then go back later and then have someone take that video and put it, like decompose it into Process Street. But right now, if you general
good tip, actually, it's just like, do all your work on screen share on Zoom and record it. If you've just switched to work from home from like a work in the office environment, just do that. Just any project you're doing, do it with someone else, do it on Zoom and share your screen and record it. Like
exactly. And then just store it somewhere.
And store it somewhere. Yeah. Store it in Zoom. Yeah. But just that one kind of hack of just adding that level of context to the communication, where it's like someone is doing it and someone's watching it and you're working together on a shared screen. I think that's kind of like a flow that a lot of people are not used to when they work in an office. But just doing that one little shift, instead of like going on Zoom and not sharing a screen and just talking to each other on video and then talking about a project and then going off and doing it separately, instead of kind of just pulling up the screen and doing it together collaboratively, like that will change a lot.
Especially now when you don't have time. That's a really, really good, quick way of doing it. Obviously, it's way better to be in Process Street because you don't have to rewatch a 30-minute video to understand it. You kind of get the steps and you just follow the steps, and it's way quicker. But that to me is the biggest fear, is that people haven't identified kind of critical processes and they don't have backups in place and it's not documented. And only one, what are you going to do right now if only one person knows how to do payroll?
And all your communication is just broken down. So exactly. Like not only is there only one person that knows how to do it, but you can't even like communicate with people properly now.
So what's in the roadmap right now? You said you have test flight. You've mentioned, I love the vision of being kind of this open source platform of process, and I would love to help however I can with that. What else is kind of down the pipeline for Process Street? In particular, one thing personally I'm curious about is the inbox functionality, because one thing that I've always wanted is one thing that people in general want is fewer inboxes to look at. So is there anything that you guys are doing so that it integrates into, say, other inboxes that people are already kind of using?
So you think there's like a few kind of key tracks that we're going to be running now. So integrations will be one track, and we'll continually kind of release different integrations. So starting with a fully open API, and then things like Slack and Salesforce and kind of direct integrations with products like that. And so, for example, like the Slack integration would be that you can manage your tasks from inside Slack. So you wouldn't need to go into the inbox anymore, right? Another thing that we're talking about on the inbox management side is actually working with AMP. It's probably a bit further off, but essentially to be able to just use your own email inbox to manage processes directly from inside Gmail. So you wouldn't even have to go into Process Street. But then also we're actually working on doing a lot of improvements to the inbox functionality. You'll be able to see some of those when you play with the mobile app, because that's kind of like the first iteration of that. So integrations, one piece. User experience is another big track that we're working on. We're coming out with the next big feature that's going to come out in the next couple of weeks is like this checklist dashboard overview. So it's a way to kind of see all the work that's going on across the organization very easily and kind of access and filter and save views and do different stuff like that. That's actually already on beta. And then with that, you'll see kind of like a new design on that screen. So there'll be a whole new redesign of the app and improvement, a lot of nav and functionality and onboarding and just kind of everything. And that's like a big thing we've been working on the design for the last couple of years and had kind of waited to kick it off. So with that, with the mobile app, so a lot of just like user experience improvements. Because mobile, the integrations, user experience, and then kind of like more advanced, kind of call it enterprise, but just more advanced functionality. So more advanced like reporting, kind of administrative management, the ability to just manage larger, more complex kind of teams and get more insights and data and availability on what's going on.
Is Asana in the pipeline for integrations, or is it more Gmail and Slack that you guys are focused on?
So we might do, without saying the product, we might kind of do something similar to like bringing in a Zapier in-house. That makes sense, which means that you kind of be able to do Asana integrations that way. The tricky part with project management in general versus like Slack or AMP is that project management, we can't manage form fields, right? So like if I have a big set of form fields in my task and I sync that with Asana, in Asana, I can't like complete all the form fields and we're like, this is a required field that you have to complete before you can like complete this task. We can sync the task and we can say, hey, there's a link here. But if the task in Process Street has a required field that needs to be filled before it can get completed, like you can't really do that from Asana.
How would you do it from Slack though?
Slack, you just pop up the field with the drop down.
Right.
So within Slack, you answer the field, right? Like, so you can answer all the form fields inside Slack. And then same with AMP within Gmail, we can build all those form fields into the email itself. So you can answer you'll have the entire form like inside an email that you can just answer. So likely, just the match of experience is not so tight unless we did something like if we could build on Asana's UI, right? So like in Salesforce or in Slack, we can build into the UI so you can completely answer the form fields that way. And if the UI doesn't support that, then it's more like a Zapier-esque connection, right?
Well, that sounds way better than Zapier. When will the Slack one come out?
So all these are probably, we're doing the API Q2, and then we'll start like the direct integrations kind of Q3 onwards. Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, happy to be a beta tester. Would love to be a beta tester of that. Let's switch gears for a second, because I know also aside from, Process Street is a productivity tool, and me and you both geek out on kind of business efficiency in general. So are there any kind of new ways that you're running Process Street, not just with the tool Process Street, but any other tools that you're using or ways that you have kind of evolved since we last caught up on how you've become more efficient managing?
It's sad to say, but the big project that we've been working on for the last 6 months has been migrating to Salesforce.
You were on Close, right?
We were on Close before, yeah. Salesforce is just a way less productive CRM than Close. It's harder to find things. Everything's more clicks. It's weirder to set up things. Things are just not as nice. But you have this much more customizable data model. And so essentially what we were trying to do was trying to map Process Street, our app, into the CRM. So we could kind of see exactly all the organizations that people have created in Process Street, all the users that people have added in Process Street, and be able to see that exactly in Salesforce. And Close's data model, the way that we designed our database in Process Street was too complicated to fit into the way that Close's database structure works, whereas Salesforce lets you customize the database structure more. So we could perfectly fit in and map in and sync so we have a true source of the.
So how are you using? So how are you using it? If you have a new customer, you start in Salesforce and that automatically creates a checklist. How are you using Process Street alongside?
Yeah. So this is us internally, right? So this is when a user signs up for Process Street, right?
Yep.
On our
so
website.
I go to your website, they sign up. What happens?
So then that creates an account in Salesforce, right? So that creates an org in Salesforce, and it's all locked down. So it's sync via engineering. So now all the data in that I can't touch in Salesforce because it's mapped exactly to the database. And then if people invite users to their organization in Process Street and they invite 2 more admins and 1 member and 3 guests, then all those get added into Salesforce and they get tagged as members and guests. So it's exactly what's going on. And if they run checklists, then in Salesforce, I can see that they're running checklists. And if they put in their credit card in Salesforce, I can see they put in their credit card. And if they upgrade their, it's exactly what's going on inside the real database that you can now see all of this in Salesforce. So it's an exact picture of the customer, right?
I see. And that allows you, so you don't have to log into Salesforce to get kind of a full 360 on what's going on with your customers. You could look in each customer has a checklist where it's updating this information.
No, we don't have any checklists running here, right? So it's just so we can just see in Salesforce what's going on. In terms of how we then use Process Street connected with Salesforce, the sales team and the CS team will have lots of processes that are embedded as links inside Salesforce, the same as how it worked in Close as well. So you might have we have one that's generate a sales proposal. So you click it and you kind of put in how many users they want and what plan. Is there any special terms or anything? And then it goes to the manager, to our director of sales who does an approval. And then it sends out the contract via HelloSign and updates Salesforce that we've sent out a proposal. When we close a deal, we'll run through a process that's again, has an approval step for the manager, but the sales rep has to explain who's the customer and what are they using it for and how many users. And then that updates the CRM and posts into Slack so everyone can see we got a new customer and what that customer is and what they're about. Does a little celebration. CS uses it for client, onboarding new customers, QBRs, quarterly business reviews.
I know you were big users of Airtable to manage projects. Are you still doing it like that?
Yeah, massive users of Airtable. We use it for projects. It's not the best project management system. We use it for projects because so for example, we have this really crazy content marketing Airtable base that tracks it's crazy. This could be its own SaaS product. It tracks every single post we've ever done, any single on our site and anywhere on the internet. So it's any piece. So one tab is a database of any piece of content on the internet related to Process Street. So it could be anything on our site. It could be any YouTube video that we made, a YouTube video someone else made. It could be any post someone else did somewhere on the internet. It could be
And how's that happening? You have a Google alert zap that when you're mentioned somewhere, it automatically
multiple things
updates?
Are feeding in there. Yeah. So it's our blog feeds in there. We have Google alert zaps feeding in there. There's also manual entries going in there. It's being collected from everything. Then we have a people tab, which tracks every person that we interact with in marketing. So if somebody made a YouTube video of us, then that person gets entered into the person's tab, and then their YouTube video gets entered into so if someone's written recorded 2 videos about Process Street and written 3 blog posts about Process Street. So I can pull up like Nick in our database and I can see all the pieces of content that you've ever mentioned Process Street in, right? Like on Forbes or on like your own site or in a video, like all of that is tracked in our database, right? And there's like another thing is like a tweet tab. So like anytime anyone tweets about Process Street, it gets logged in this table and then everything gets connected. So I can click on Nick and I can see Nick's tweeted about us 5 times. He's done 2 YouTube videos on us. He's linked to us 3 times. And then like all of our keywords are in there. It's like this crazy database basically, right? It tracks like our blog calendar and what we're writing, all our guest post scheduling. It like automates out like updates and emails. It's like this crazy system.
You should definitely record a video of
we've
that.
Got
I'm
a
sure
couple
people...
of blog posts on that actually.
Oh, you do? Okay, I'll take a look at that.
Yeah, it's like our content marketing system or something.
So then do you have automation? Like if someone has mentioned you more than a certain number of times, you automatically reach out to them or try to do something with them?
Yeah, well, in Airtable, you create different views and stuff. So it's like our top share of views and we do things like that, right? So we utilize them in various campaigns, right? When we're launching things.
So what are the other tools that you guys are using internally? You mentioned Salesforce, Airtable, obviously Process Street, Slack,
Zoom, G Suite. What else we got? Greenhouse for recruitment.
How do you like that for recruitment?
I don't have anything that I love, but Greenhouse has been the best tool I've used so far.
Well, I want to be respectful of your time. Where can people find out more about Process Street and all the stuff that you have in the pipeline?
Yeah, so you just visit our website, process.st, or just Google Process Street. And if you want to connect with me, you can find me on Twitter, VinayP10, or LinkedIn.
Cool. All right, man. Well, we got to do this more often. I love geeking out on business efficiency with you. Stay safe. Try to get through this. And thanks for your time today. This was awesome.
Yeah, appreciate it, man. Have a good day.
All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed the show. Like I said, this tool is amazing. I'm a huge fan of it. Now, full disclosure, it can be slightly complicated compared to some of the other tools. So there is a learning curve. But once you get past that learning curve, this will fundamentally transform the way that you run your company. We have a special discount link for Process Street as being one of their partners. So you can go to tools.getleverage.com and check that out. And like always, if you enjoyed today's episode, we would really appreciate it if you rated, commented, subscribed, shared with a friend if you found this to be valuable. If you need help with process documentation, optimization, automation, we have a team of world-class people at this stuff. Feel free to reach out to us. This episode was episode 68. So if you go to getleverage.com/episode/68, we could have a chat. You could fill out that form and we could see how we could be helpful. Thanks.